is day 211, and you're welcome to another interesting story about the Bible. If you're joining my podcast for the first time, this podcast talks about reading from Genesis to Revelation. In between, we're going to cover the entire stories of the Bible in the entire 1 year. So far, we have made it great to Second Chronicles, and we follow a structured Bible reading guide using this particular book, Daily Bible Reading Guide. Every single day we look at an Old Testament, a New Testament, a Psalm, and a Proverb. And the scriptures that we read for today are left in the description box below. So you could go read them yourself and come and leave a comment with us. Alright? Okay, so we're making great progress, and I'm happy to announce that today is day 211 and we have 154 days to go. May God help me. May God help me. It's not easy. It's not easy. So we yesterday was one of my favorite scriptures, one of the anchor scriptures that I base my entire life on. The scriptures that led me to God. We dealt with it yesterday in Romans 12. Yeah. So today we're looking at Second Chronicles 26, Chronicles 26, chapters 26 to 28. We'll look at Romans chapters 13, and then we'll look at Proverbs 20, verse 11. So let's start with Proverbs, because it's just one scripture. So we'll look at verse 11, 20 verse 11. Even a child is known by his deeds, whether what he does is pure and right. I only read this Psalm and Proverbs. I don't really share my insights on it. I dramatize the stories from the Old Testament and the New Testament when I think it needs to be. I lace it with Nigerian humor. So my fans are welcome, or rather the people who joined me to do the Bible in 1 year, you're welcome. You're welcome. Please share this to the channel if you're yet to subscribe. Please share this with people who are interested in knowing more about the Bible. Please share it with them. Okay, so Uzziah is Amaziah's 16-year-old. 16 occurs several times in today's story. 16-year-old son. He becomes king and he reigns for 52 years. Looking back through the book of Kings, this is the king with the second highest reigning length of time. The longest reigning king was 55 years. The majority of them 40, 32, 20 something, so he reigned for 52 years. His mom was Jecoliah, and he pleased God. Yes, he pleased God. And when they write here that the king pleases God, that means the king was not meddling with juju. He was not meddling with idols, and he was not worshiping Baal. Listen, in my entire reading of this book, God's pet peeve is this idol worship matter. I'm telling you, I'm not supporting it. I'm not saying those things are not sins or according to the Bible, but I'm convinced that when I look at the book of all the things that Moses listed as what was considered do this and not do this, the thing that occurred everywhere and stirred God up the most, and in active life God reacted to more aggressively than any other thing, was this issue of idol worship. So when a king is said to not offend God, that means he didn't meddle with idol worship. And that was a big win for God. The other matters, he would tackle it. These kings, some of them had excesses and things like that. He would overlook them, but not when they worshipped idols. Okay, so Zachariah, do you remember the Zachariah that was stoned yesterday? Yes, this Zachariah used to teach Uzziah. Uzziah was the son of the king. So Zachariah was managing and coaching the next king. Son of kings have different sets of teachers, because they have to train them up to be leaders, different from how they train their subjects. So Zachariah taught Uzziah to fear God, and Uzziah actually had a real fear of God. He fought the Philistines, whom I nicknamed the Phillies. He fought the Philistines. He broke down the walls of Gath. Gath was where Goliath came from, Jabneh and Ashdod, and built new towns. God helped him with the Arabs from Gur and the Menuhites. His fame spread even to Egypt. He was very, very powerful. He built fortified towers, forts, water systems, and kept a lot of great livestock. He was like a real husbandman. I think among all the kings, he's the one that showed high affinity for livestock because he was constantly buying fields, vineyards, livestock, animal husbandry, goats, cow, cattle, spent a vast amount of time nurturing these things, hiring people. He had a very large animal husbandry and farming business. He hired widely. He trained warriors organized by Jael and Marseille. He had 2,600 clan leaders. When you tell the stories of some people, it's very straightforward. You can just summarize it in a few minutes. You tell some people's stories and then you are just stumbling on what to say. The stories and the matters around them are so complicated, So this is pretty straightforward. Uzziah. Another thing that people here described as God was with him was when a person became really wealthy. So meaning that being wealthy, like having real physical material wealth, is actually supposed to be a sign of God's presence in someone's life. In the life of people who love God. When somebody loves God and he becomes very wealthy obeying God, his wealth is referred to as true riches. That is riches that are not just based on just material things. So he became very wealthy and very powerful. He had 500 troopers, and each of these troopers could wield shields, spears, helmets, coats of armor, bows, and sling stones. They had a large number of fighting soldiers. The walls were designed from corners and towers, and he was a very powerful king. Like, he was well traveled, he knew, and he kind of like upgraded Jerusalem a bit, in Judah. Upgraded the modern, but he became proud. And I think that another thing that really offends God from all I've read in the Bible is when you worship Baal, like when you worship idols, and then when you become proud. So he entered the sanctuary and personally tried to burn incense. Now, let me take you back a bit. When Moses came out and Aaron became the first high priest, and the only people that were allowed to enter the sanctuary, like they enter the Holy of Holies or conduct any form of sacrifice and worship, were only the people who came from Aaron's bloodline. If you were not Aaron's bloodline, even if you were from Aaron, even if you were his cousin, you're not allowed to do so. And that has remained for many years. So Uzziah is not from Aaron's bloodline, he's from David. So David is cool, David is great, David is awesome, but David is not Aaron's bloodline. Well, Uzziah somehow felt, I've loved God, what are people even doing, Seth? I can do it now. I'll just go to the temple and offer the sacrifice, just like you guys do. What can't you do? And so they were people gathered, like 180 people were trying to tell him, sir, excuse me, sir, please, Mr. King, sorry, sir, excuse me, Uzziah, please, may I be permitted to speak, sir? This thing you're about to do is not really permitted for you. Please, sir, let me advise you. It goes against all that we stand for. You're not supposed to offer sacrifices because it belongs to Aaron's bloodline. Oh no, I will offer her. No. If I'm wrong, sir, please, sir, with all due respect, sir, you are crossing a line that is not meant for you, sir. So please, someone else talk to the king. The king, so they were all begging the king, and the king didn't want to listen. So as they were talking, suddenly a little spot appeared on his head. And the moment they saw it, they recognized it instantly. Leprosy! Leprosy! And everybody began to yell. The king too. What is it? Oh, and he recognized it. Oh my God, this is leprosy. He knew that God had caught him. So of course it was weeks away, and the leprosy spread. He had to remain in isolation, and he died in isolation. His son Jotham began to rule by proxy. Maybe he'd come to his father and ask for whatever, and the father would tell him what, and then go back and continue. And Jotham became king when his father became king. So even though Uzziah was right and did right by God, he disobeyed by breaking that important cardinal law of pride and going into the temple to try and do what he was not allowed to do. And his son Azariah becomes king. So Azariah the high priest, So his son Ahaz becomes king. Jotham becomes king at his death. Jotham was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 16 years. Remember, his father was 16 when he became king. Jotham reigned for 16 years. His mom was Jerusha. Jotham pleased God and followed his father's footsteps, but did not extend it to entering the temple to do any idol. So sorry, to conduct any worship in the sanctuary. He was a very cautious king. He didn't ruffle any feathers. He just followed the law quietly, and the portion allocated to him is very little. It's very little. He followed in his dad's footsteps. He built walls, fortresses, towers in the wooden area. He received tributes of silver, wheat, and barley. He was very cautious not to disobey God. His son Ahaz became king at 23 years old after his father passed. We're not told what killed his father. Ahaz also reigned for 16 years, but he did not please God. Quickly, he plunged himself into Baal worship, even sacrificed his own son, burning incense everywhere, up and down and everywhere. Every green tree, he was burning incense. Every valley, he was burning incense. Every high place, he was burning incense. Every Asherah pole, he was burning. Like he was overdoing it, He did it everywhere. So God was, of course, not pleased with him, and allowed the king of Aram to defeat him and exile many people to Damascus. Israel's army, their sister nation, also attacked him and injured his army greatly. In fact, in one single day, Israel's king killed 120,000 troopers of Judah. Zikri, I don't know who Zikri is again. I can't remember who he was. Zikri killed the king's son, the heir apparent, maybe. He killed the king's son. He killed the vice king, like the vice president. He killed the vice president, and he killed the palace commander. Like look, Israel's army went to town with Judah. They went to town with Judah, and they seized 200,000 women and children and took them back to Samaria. A man of God approached them and said, God was angry with Judah. That is why he allowed you, Israel, defeat them. But you have gone too far, and now you've upset God and the whole of heaven. You are going to make yourselves slaves of this Judah. Oh, this Judah that you have enslaved, like you're going to make yourself slaves of this Judah. Please return these people. So four men said, please don't bring the prisoners of Judah to Samaria. Don't, please. I'm begging people in the name of God. They are our brothers. We know we have issues with them. They are our it's like our country breaks up into two, and there's northern and southern Nigeria, and then we are fighting. See, please, they are our brothers. We beg you, please don't bring them here. Okay? So they are your relatives. Return these prisoners of war, these women that you brought. Return them. So we can't afford any more sin and guilt on us. So those four leaders that stopped the progression of the prisoners of war into Samaria, stopped them, and then went to the booty and took out stuff and began to treat the people, clothed the ones that were naked, fed the ones that were sick, had the ones that were injured bound, and then had them sent back to Judah. Back to Jericho. Ahaz sought help from the king of Isaiah. He still didn't turn to God. He sought help from the king of Isaiah after an invasion from the Philistines and the Edomites, but the Assyrians, instead of helping him, they attacked him too. So Ahaz was really an unfortunate king. Really an unfortunate king. Tiglath. They attacked him and they took treasuries from the temple. They didn't even care. They just finished him. They took him and they took them to go and appease their gods. Please, and destroyed God's temple, stripping the entire thing, closing it down. Must have really offended God. No one could even worship there anymore. And even Judah, the people of Judah were all led astray because there was no temple to worship. These people didn't really know God for themselves. They were just following rituals. When Ahaz passed, he wasn't buried in the royal cemetery. His crimes were too many. He wasn't buried in the royal cemetery like the other people. And his son Hezekiah famous Hezekiah becomes king. So that's our Old Testament today, and Proverbs. We read Proverbs, right? Yes, we read Proverbs. So our Romans, we look at, finally, we'll, in a few minutes, we'll round up Romans 13. All authority. So Paul is now addressing the Gentiles. So he says, all authority has been established by God. So submit to the authorities you find yourself in. I think at this time people were saying that, okay, we're now Christians. We don't need to submit to the authority in Rome or in Spain or wherever it was that he was talking to these people. But so he was trying to say, part of what is expected of you as Christians now is to submit to the authority. All authority has been established by God. So refusing to submit is rebelling against constituted authority, and it will attract judgment. So rulers that God has placed are God's servants, and if you want to avoid their wrath, do what is right by them. Even if they request for taxes, pay what you owe. Honor whom you should honor, respect whom you should respect. In other words, don't become a troublemaker because you're a Christian. Because I think a lot of people were like, I'm no longer following the laws of this land. I belong to a different regime now, and I have a Lord and Savior, and I will not pay taxes. I will not vote. I will not. Anyway, respect who you must. Love everybody. Love. All the laws around adultery, murder, and stealing are summed up in one word: love. And how do you know that we love? When you do the right things. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's how we know that. So we are only having these conversations about don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, don't murder, because you don't have love. If you have love, once you have decided to love your neighbor as yourself, these other things follow automatically. That's what Paul was saying here. Love is the fulfillment of the law. For salvation, the salvation we have today is nearer than when we first had it, and when we first believed. So let us put aside all these dark deeds of immorality, drunkenness, debauchery, jealousy, and put on the armor of light. Come on now, come on now, people. Let's be cool people. Let's be cool people. Let's stop being nasty. If you clothe yourself with Christ, you won't gratify the desires of a sinful nature. And that's what Paul was talking about in Romans 13. And that brings our Bible reading today to a perfect end. I'm glad it's not as long as other episodes. So please subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. If you're curious about knowing the Bible stories, we're covering the entire Bible. So I read the stories, I retell the stories, and I demonstrate where necessary. Lace it with some Nigerian humor. Okay? Subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification button so I can go live, and please leave a comment below. I'm going to leave the scriptures that we read in the description box, so go read them for yourself if you're curious, or share this with someone who's curious about knowing about the Bible, or would like to be in a community where they talk about the Bible and will do great. So my toddler is here. You want to eat? Alright, I'm coming. Give me a minute. Alright, so that brings our episode to an end today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, where we'll look at episode 212. Have a good evening, and God bless you.